Okay, let's go on to punctuation practice review. So last week we reviewed some punctuation. Can someone, oopsie. Let's begin with these sentences. And we're gonna go into a more in-depth look at commas. I know we had a little bit of a hard time with those yesterday, or sorry, last week. Okay.
Excuse
All
me,
right. Mhm.
I doesn't come last week. But
Oh, that's
is
okay. Oh, sorry, go ahead.
I didn't come last week. Uh, what do the last week?
So last week we reviewed punctuation. So we reviewed the comma, semicolon, colon, period, exclamation mark, question mark. And those were the only ones we were able to get through last week. Oh, and apostrophe as well. So if you want, I believe we do have the recording of last week. Remy, do we have that on the Moodle?
It should be posted on the YouTube channel. So
Okay, yeah.
I can put that in the chat.
Yeah, so if you guys want to review that after class, you can go ahead and do that. And for those who were here last week, would you like to give us a head start on this activity? I can give you a hint for the for A. There is a colon in this sentence. So colon looks like this, remember? And there's also a couple commas.
Yes, so colon in after three.
Yep, perfect. There is a colon after Italy because remember, what comes after colons can be lists or further explanations. All right.
There is a comma in after Rome.
Yep. And where else?
There is a full stop also.
Yes, full stop at the very end. And we're missing one more comma. Can someone tell me where that is? Commas can be used to separate lists. So where can the last comma go?
After Italy?
No, because the colon comes after Italy because we have a list here of Rome, Florence, and Venice. And remember, commas are used to separate subjects in a list. So we have Rome, comma, and then so do you know where the other comma would go?
After Florence?
Yep, perfect. So remember, it's used to separate a list. So he wanted to see 3 cities in Italy: Rome, Florence, and Venice. All right, let's review this one.
After X, there is a comma?
Yeah, we can use a comma, and because remember, a comma can separate two independent phrases. So Joan likes eggs and Jennifer does not. Well, this is technically a dependent clause, so we can say but Jennifer does not. That would be a correct sentence. But you could also use a semicolon in this case. So Joan likes eggs and Jennifer does not. But for this, for simplicity, we'll just stick with Joan likes eggs, but Jennifer does not. All right, let's go to number C, or letter C, sorry.
There was a I was not capital outside.
All right, so we are missing an apostrophe and a comma.
There is a apostrophe in after it.
Perfect. And it's is a short version of it is. All right. So it's a nice day outside. I will go to my friend's house. The only one that we're missing right now is a comma.
The comma is after.
Perfect. Yeah, good job, you guys. So it is a nice day outside. I will go to my friend's house. All right. What about D?
There's a question mark.
Yeah, and the question mark is at the very end. All right, and
There's a comma after tired.
Well, we wouldn't you look tired, and then today, did you get enough sleep last night? Wouldn't make much sense if we put a comma there. Instead, we could put a comma after today. So you look tired today would be our would be an example of our introductory phrase. And then did you get enough sleep last night? Question mark would be our question.
Okay, teacher.
All right, awesome. But great job. And let's begin with our so today we're going to review quotes, double quotes, hyphens, and dash, and then also strokes and slashes. But before that, I do want to review the comma rules because I feel like we had a little bit of a hard time grasping onto that last week. So I've extended it. So there's 6 ways that you can use commas, right? So we already learned about these 3 last week, which is to use commas to separate independent clauses when they are joined by any of these 7 coordinating conjunctions. So and, but, for, or, nor, so, or yet, these are all examples of conjunctions, right? So can someone give me an example of using a comma to separate independent clauses and then join them with any of these coordinating conjunctions?
I didn't go to school today.
School today, okay, comma, and then what conjunction are you going to use?
So
So
I will not well. I not well. No. I was not well.
sorry, could you say that one last part one more time? Sorry, could you say that the last independent clause one more time? The one that belongs right after the so?
I was not well.
It wouldn't really make too much sense to say I didn't go to school today, so I wasn't well. You could say, you could flip that around and say, I wasn't well today, comma, so I didn't go to school. Would you like to try that instead?
Yes, teacher.
I was sick today, comma,
So
I oops. There you go. All right, could someone else give me an example?
Excuse me.
Go ahead.
I went to school, but my friends doesn't come yet.
Instead of saying was not, you could say weren't. So I'll just say we're not here today. So you wouldn't use the word was because that would be in the past tense, and we're talking about something that's happening in the present, right? So we'd use were. All right, thank you for that example. That was great. Can someone else give me one more example of using commas to separate independent clauses and then joining those 2 together with a comma and another conjunction, any of these? Isurika or Tisan, would you like to go?
I like to eat rice and curry.
Yeah, so the problem with that is since we have only 2 words in that list, we wouldn't really use a comma to separate those. And what we're trying to do is combine 2 independent clauses, right? So I ate rice can be its own independent clause, but then curry can't be an independent clause by itself. Because remember, independent clauses are phrases inside a sentence that can be its own sentence. So I was sick today can be its own sentence, and I didn't go to school can be its own sentence. And then so we were combining those with the comma and the conjunction. So in that example, we could say I was eating rice, comma, but I had already eaten, so I couldn't eat that much. Say something like that. Yes, anything that can combine 2 independent clauses.
I went to school and I learned Science.
I went to school, comma, and I learned, yeah, science. All right, awesome. So I went to school can be its own independent clause, and then I learned, I'll just say, I learned, yeah, we'll just stick with sciences. Usually, like in those sentences, you'd like to be like a little bit more specific, but it's fine in this case. So I went to school, comma, and so remember we used a comma and, which is our comma and our conjunction, and then we have two independent clauses on either side. Awesome. And remember, we can also use commas after introductory clauses, phrases, or words. So can we review that really quick? And can someone give me an example? So you could say, in the morning, I got, I'm not sure, we could say, I tripped over my shoelace. There you go. So this would be an example of an introductory clause, phrase, or words that come before the main clause. So for example, would be another phrase that you could put a comma after. Can someone give me another, just a phrase that in either an introductory clause, just a phrase or word that can come before your main clause? Generally,
In the evening,
I heard multiple. So we could so with such as usually precedes like a list. So you could say, I don't think you would warrant a comma, because if I was going to use it in a sentence, it'd be like such as, it would be following another sentence, and in that case you would probably want to combine it, because it's the same thing as using because as like your first word, because it depends on the previous sentence. But instead there's also therefore, which is also which can be used similarly to such as, where you use it to explain what the previous sentence was saying, but it still can be considered an introductory clause. And then I also heard someone say, in the evening. I really like these examples. Thank you for sharing. All right, let's do okay, number 3, which is using a pair of commas in the middle of a sentence to set off clauses, phrases, and words that are not essential to the meaning of the sentence. Use one comma to indicate before, to indicate the beginning of the pause, and one to indicate the end of the pause. So if you want, you could say, I'll say, Miss, or I could say, the author, born in 1978, wrote 50 books in his lifetime. Okay. So this would be an example of a clause, phrase, or a clause or a phrase that isn't essential to the sentence. Because if we cut this out, that would still be a complete sentence. This is just some additional information, right? And so when we bring up additional information like that in a sentence, we can just surround it in 2 commas, right? So the author, born in 1978, comma, wrote 50 books in his lifetime. All right. And so can someone else, actually, I think we can skip on the example for this one, because it's just setting up or having basically phrases that aren't essential to the sentence. But you'll see this a lot in articles and books. All right, let's go over the next three. So it's using commas to separate three or more words, phrases, or clauses written in a series. And so we have that example over here with the Rome, comma, Florence, and Venice. So this is again just to help list anything. So my sister likes chocolate, chocolate, bread, and rice. All right, so I used commas to separate a list. Now our list was the chocolate, bread, and rice. All right. And okay, number 5 is using commas to separate two or more coordinate adjectives that describe the same noun. Be sure to never add an extra comma between the final adjective and the noun itself, or to use commas with non-coordinate adjectives. I know this sounds confusing, but an example of this would be the big, comma, hairy monster was in front of my house. Okay. So big and hairy would be the examples of the two adjectives, and we combine, we list those with the comma. But remember, when they say, be sure to never add an extra comma between the final adjective and the noun, that example is shown right here, right? So hairy would be our final adjective. So we could say the big, scary, hairy monster. That would also be, we could extend that a little longer by adding scary. But you see how we have the comma here, and then no comma over here, because we want, basically we're attaching all these adjectives to the noun, which is the monster. So can someone give me another example? Of using adjectives to describe something?
The small ugly
Mhm.
goes in that house.
The small ugly goat was
Goes,
in his house. Perfect.
Mm.
So small and ugly would be the adjectives of the goat. Awesome job. Okay, and then this one is a little more formal, but it's basically commas that are used to separate the geographical names and items and dates and addresses as well. So for example, on October 3rd, comma 2015. So when you're writing dates in on a paper, you would write it like this. And then Jeff Smith, which is the person that we're introducing, is a marketing director at Intel. And remember, this is very similar to our to using a pair of commas that aren't essential to the meaning of a sentence, because we could get rid of this and the sentence would still make sense together, right? So Jeff Smith, marketing director at Intel, traveled to 14 Appian Way in Rome, Italy. So we put a comma between the city and the country. So I could say, and this can also apply to a city and a state. So if I was going to say Sacramento, California, or we do Boise, Idaho, right? So these are examples of cities within states in the US. Okay. So does everybody understand what commas can be used for in geographical names, dates, and addresses? Let me know if you have any questions, but I would recommend you to take notes on this just for future reference. All right, and now let's go over double quotes versus single quotes. So double quotes these are referred to as quotation marks, by the way, in formal writing. So double quotes are used to mark speech for titles of short works like TV shows and articles. So she said, "Can someone please help me move this box?" And then can someone give me another example of using double quotation marks, please?
do you want to help me? I asked.
Yeah, perfect. Awesome. Can someone give me one more example of using double quotes, this time within an article or to describe an article title? So we could say, I'll give you guys an example. So we could say the article read China's largest river is drying out. Right? So that would be an example of describing an article title using quotation marks. All right. And so double quotes versus single quotes. This is the American version, but there's also a version in the UK, and there's also a German version. So I'm just gonna teach you guys the American version to keep it simple. But in the UK, whether to use single or double quotes is to mark, we can use it to mark direct speech depending on editorial style, but both are acceptable. So I know that in British publications, they mostly use the single quotes, even if they're quoting something that someone said. So yes. And now let's do single quotes. So single quotes are used to enclose a quote within a quote, and a quote within a headline or a title within a quote. So essentially, you only use single quotes in the American version to put in between two double quotes. So for example, I have the article read, Germany states they are halting all production. So this is a quote within a quote on new Porsche cars. All right, and then a way we can use that in a sentence is if you're writing a dialogue between two characters and the character quotes someone else, you could say, he said, Mr. John said, and then this would be our quote within a quote. The final is next week. So can someone give me one more example of how they can use single quotes within a sentence? Anami, would you like to give this a shot? Oh, sorry, I saw Chanali and Nadula unmute their mics. Would you guys like to give it a try?
That book is about Harry Potter's lifestyle.
We wouldn't really use a single quote within that, because remember, a single quote is essentially inside a double quote. So you'd need to get a sentence with a double quote first, and then try to quote something inside of that. So you could say, oh, sorry, go ahead. The book.
The book is about.
And then how would you incorporate the double quotes into that? Or into the following parts of the sentence?
Harry Potter's lifestyle.
Yeah, so we wouldn't really use any quotes in this, but you could, sorry. If you want, maybe you could quote something that the author J.K. Rowling said, or maybe quote Harry like referring to something else that another character said. Would you like to give it a shot? So we could use this subject. We could say, Harry said, "Be careful." Hagrid said, and then we can use the single quotes this time. Said there. There you go. So Harry said, "Be careful." Hagrid said, you don't want to use too much says in a single sentence. If you want, you could say Harry yelled or Harry stated. be careful. Hagrid said their wands are more powerful. And remember, this is a quote that that Hagrid said. So that would be within the single quotes within the larger like double quotes. But I think you guys get this example. So what we can do is look closer at the double quotes. Actually, does anybody have any questions on this? Sorry, before I move on. If you want, I can give you like more examples to clarify. If not, I'm all right. We can move on then. So let's take a deeper look into the US versus UK version. So US writers and UK newspapers tend to use the similar styles, but UK publishers remember use the single quotes to represent a quote. So for example, she shouted, "Get out," would be the same with all US publications and US writers and UK newspapers. But UK publishers would use the single quotes. So just I guess if you guys really want something to just focus on the US version, because the US version is also accepted in the UK and in Germany as well. And Australia. Australia uses British writing, so or British syntax rules. Okay. Hyphen. Let's look at hyphens. So we're gonna look at hyphens and dashes, but and remember these are the exact same symbols, but they're used for two completely different purposes. Okay. So when you see them, they'll look the same, but they have different names and they have different purposes. So a hyphen is used to join two words or parts of words together while avoiding confusion or ambiguity. Ambiguity means confusion. It's a different word for I guess it's the simplest way to say it, but it's like it's basically if you didn't understand what that word meant, it's just another word for confusion. And there are some cases where hyphens preserve written clarity, such as where there are letter collisions where a prefix is added or in family relations. So see, here's some examples of hyphens. So rundown would be an example of join words. So for example, can you give me a rundown on your client list, right? That would be two joint words using a hyphen, right? So that we have that example right here. So join two words. And then we also have the word cooperate, which uses a prefix co, right? So this is an example where a prefix is added. And then we also have anti-nuclear, which is also, can someone tell me what the prefix of anti-nuclear is?
Anti.
So anti-nuclear would be the prefix. All right. And then we have father-in-law. Father-in-law would be an example of using hyphens to separate family relationships. Father-in-law, son-in-law, daughter-in-law. You would use these hyphens in between to separate those words. All right. And then we also have where we can also use hyphens to join words together. For example, up to date, which is just another example of rundown, right? So those are both examples of words just joined together using hyphens, right? And then we have email. So email is joining parts of of words together. Does anyone know what the E in email stands for? Electronic. So the full I guess word of, or the full two words that make up email are electronic mail, and you can we shorten that down to email. But in modern times, like this was email usually had a dash. I'm not really sure when the change happened, but you can also write email like this now. So the hyphen isn't necessary anymore. It was like about 10 years ago, it's not anymore. So Yeah, so that's an example of joining parts of words together. So can someone give me an example of more examples of any of these ways that we can use hyphens? So to join words, a prefix or family relations.
Son-in-law,
Yeah, so son in
Ice
law.
cream. Ice cream.
Yeah. I mean we could some people do write ice cream like this, so yes. Do we have any more examples? So another one could be a to-do list, right? That's how we write to do. Or I mean you can't write it like that. You could write a to-do list, and to-do would be the combination of a word. So that's just joint words, right? And can someone give me an example of using a hyphen before a prefix, please? Or I mean, sorry, after a prefix.
non-permeable,
Sorry, one more time.
non-permeable,
Oh, sorry. Wait, can you say that one more time?
non-permeable. It is a science word.
Oh, I heard you. So you could say non. So that's when something can't cross through a certain like barrier. Okay. Yeah, so non would be our prefix in this case. Another prefix example would be we could use like in oh my goodness. So in America we have like a lot of
Eco
like
sensitive. Eco
yeah,
sensitive.
perfect. Yeah. So ego would be like uh would be sorry, ego would be our prefix in this case. I really like that example. And then like anti dash I'll just use
Biotic. Antibiotic.
yeah. I mean I think antibiotics would be its own thing together. Um I'm not, I'll do anti-gun maybe, and then like pro I don't know. There's so much here. I'll, well, I'll just use anti-gun example. Okay. All right, now let's work on dashes. So dashes are remember hyphens are more common in the English language. Dashes are usually a lot more informal, and they're used to add parenthetical statements. So this sounds like a long word, but it's just statements that you can put inside parentheses. So anything that goes in here would be considered a parenthetical statement. Or comments in much the same way as you would use brackets. In formal writing, you should use the bracket rather than the dash, as a dash is considered less formal. Dashes can be used to create emphasis in a sentence, right? So she might come to the party, dash, you may never know. So remember, this can also be put in parentheses, which is why it's considered a parenthetical statement, because it's not essential to the sentence, right? Let's see. You may think she is a liar, a dash, she isn't. And remember, again, this can be put in inside parentheses because it's not an essential part of the sentence. It might be an essential part of the plot in this case, but it's not in this specific sentence, right? Because if we write she isn't, it would mean the same thing, right? But remember, try to stay away from hyphens and parentheses when you're well, try to stay from hyphens. I mean, not hyphens, sorry, dashes. When you're doing any formal writing, because it's again really informal. You don't really use this too much unless you're I've noticed in books sometimes they do this, but if you're writing like a very formal essay about a research subject or a subject that you researched, you wouldn't really use these dashes. Okay, all right, now we can go over strokes or slashes. A stroke or slash, which is just this symbol right here, is just used to indicate or. So it's often used in formal or informal text to indicate the word or. So for example, when leaving the classroom, the teacher noticed that the student has left his/her backpack. But we can replace this with or, right? And it would still mean the same thing. So his or her backpack. So this slash is just to indicate the word or. And so another example is, oh, I'm sorry, I have the example twice. If/when Mary ever shows up, we can all head out to the party together. So remember that slash can be replaced with or, and the sentence would remain the same. So if or when Mary ever shows up, we can all head out to the party together. All right, can someone give me another example of using a stroke or slash?
You can't play inside or outside of this place. So,
Yeah, for this one, it would be you would actually have to use the word or, because a slash is usually it's kind of used for nouns that
No,
are
sorry,
similar.
sorry.
Oh yeah, go ahead.
No, it was a mistake. I was just checking if my mic was working. Sorry, please continue.
No, it's okay. So remember, inside or outside are technically opposites of each other. So we don't really want to combine those with a slash. So but using or for this case would make sense. All right. So remember, we can use his/her, if/when. Even when some people are listing their pronouns, you can use slash. So my pronouns are she/her, right? Because remember, this slash can be replaced with the or. So she/her. And there's also, or like they/them, or he/him. So you can use slashes for pronouns, right? So she or her, they or them, him or oh, sorry, he or him. There you go. All right. And so can someone give me one more example or of using a slash?
Are you girl/boy?
Again, remember, this would be another example of having the polar opposites. So we'd have girl on one end and then boy on the other end. So we'd have that or essentially like in between those, since those aren't words that are too similar to each other. But it is a good use of or. So are you a boy or girl? There you go. Okay, I think it's time to move on from slashes. Let's go to parentheses. I'm not sure if we have time. You know what? I think we might we'll review parentheses next week. I think we can use the last couple minutes to do some conversation practice. And or actually, why don't we do monologue practice? Okay. Can someone basically we'll start with this first character right here. His name is Billy. So can someone raise their hand and give me a description of Billy? So describe his hair, his emotions. So for example, this is Billy. He has black hair and he looks very distressed.
He is very angry
Mm-hmm.
and sad.
All right, awesome. Okay, can someone give me an example of the girl in the middle? You can give her a name, any name you'd like. You could say, Rachel has blonde hair and she's angry.
she has a nice hairstyle.
Yeah, all right, awesome. And okay, There you go. Move it over. Okay, what about the third one? She also has black hair, but her hair is curly, right? And she has a bright smile.
She is
So does anyone else want to
thinking.
give me an? Sorry, say that one more time. So how would you describe this person like in a sentence?
She is thinking,
Yeah,
and
you could say
she
she
is
looks
very
very
happy.
thoughtful. Yeah, she's very happy and thoughtful. Okay. Now let's have some conversation practice before we review our homework. So okay, you guys can choose which prompt and I'll talk to you and I will have a conversation with you guys. So the first one is let's have a formal conversation and simulate a job interview. And we can do more of this next week because we are running out of time. So who would like to go?
Second topic.
Okay, listen, we'll talk about the second topic. Netula, what's your favorite TV show or movie?
My favorite movie is Sonic the Hedgehog.
Awesome. And what do you like about Sonic the Hedgehog?
He is very fast and very cute. I like him.
Awesome. So I haven't watched that movie yet. Hmm. Are you watching the one that just came out recently? Is that the one you're talking about? Where it's the one where they animated his eyes like really I don't know how to try to describe it, but their animation style was really controversial.
His eyes are blue and he has a power.
Mhm.
When he came to anger, he turns to yellow color
Mhm.
and he is very nice. He has a there is a person tried to catch the Sonic and yeah, get to some get to
That's
get to
okay if you're stuck.
experiment.
Okay, awesome. Thank you so much. Let's see, Sitika or Asiri or Charuli. Would you like to go?
Teacher, can I go?
Okay, so
I want to talk about the first topic.
the first prompt. All right.
Yes.
So hi Asiri, what job have you applied for today? Or what job position are
I
you
have
applying for?
applied. I am applying for a IT cyber security service. Cyber
All right,
security.
awesome. All right, perfect. And do you have any experience with, or sorry, what operating systems do you have experiences with?
I have experience with Windows and Linux.
All right. And what is your experience like so far in the cybersecurity field?
Cybersecurity field, I have not gathered many experiences as this is my first job.
All right, awesome. And what kind of are actually hold on. Not sure what I should ask. What are your greatest okay, so for the role that you're applying for, you are expected to be a part of a team. And we would like to know how or what your greatest strengths and weaknesses are.
I am good at doing group activities and working with groups, and I am a really friendly person. And my weaknesses are I might not be able to work for long hours in the same place.
Mhm.
Same place.
Okay, so we can try to accommodate that here. Um, let's see. Do you have any experience with Python in terms of cybersecurity? programming?
Yes, I have tried doing three languages like Python, C Sharp, and C++.
All right. And out of the three programs that that you know, which one do you consider yourself to be more familiar with?
I would consider myself to be familiar with Python because Python is way easier to learn.
Yeah. Okay. Let's see. And how would you describe can you describe your skill set to me?
Please,
Or
can
in
you describe that question a little more?
Yeah. So if you were just to meet me for like the first time, can you just give me a quick elevator speech about what you hope to do in your cybersecurity career, since I know this is your first job?
I wish to be a security wall for this company and be good at my job. I would wish to be at like a super employee in this company.
Mhm.
And I
All right.
have, okay,
And sorry, no, you can keep going.
no, I don't really have
Okay.
anything.
No, it's okay. Let's
This
see.
is my first time.
Yeah, it's okay. Let's see. We're just basically practicing a formal conversation. So, yeah, just try to stick away from try to stay away from like abbreviating your words too much. Okay. All right. Let's move on to homework. So I want you all to again read an English article and then tell the class what it was about. Um, uh, I will try to set up an assignment in Moodle so you can submit a paragraph of basically what the article was about. And I want you to again keep watching English TV and movies and have as much English conversations as possible. When my mom was younger and their family didn't have TV, so what she'd do is go uh and buy an English newspaper and try to read that. So if you want, you could try that. Thank you so much for your work today, and then we'll go over our punctuations and the rest, and then we'll introduce a new topic next week as well, okay?